When you type how to make exercise less miserable into Google, you're told to make it fun, listen to music, or go with a friend. I understand this isn't enough. If you truly find exercise miserable, these surface level tips are just that, surface level. To understand how to make exercise less miserable, and this is possible, we need to go below the surface and look at how exercise makes you feel, how you think about it, and what motivates you to do it. I'm Dr. Paula Watson. I'm a psychologist providing therapy for people struggling with exercise, eating and weight. One of the reasons I became an exercise psychologist is that I've always got such a buzz out of movement myself. So I wanted to understand why this wasn't the same for everyone and how I could help others experience that same buzz I got, which is why I call my company Made Up to Move. Made Up, it's a Northern England phrase for feeling really delighted about something. If you struggle with exercise, the idea of movement making you feel really delighted probably feels a world away right now. So this is okay. I'm going to explain why your feeling makes perfect sense and share some practical strategies to help exercise feel a little less miserable, perhaps even enjoyable. If you find exercise miserable, telling you to go with a friend, listen to music, or make things fun, it might help ease the pain a little, but it's unlikely to be hugely helpful because A, it's not likely to change your enjoyment of the movement itself, so it means you've got to keep enjoying something miserable. And B, if you're reliant on those distractions but never develop any enjoyment for the activity itself, once those distractions are removed, so say your friend can't go with you anymore, it's going to be harder to keep up. What I want to talk about is how to change your relationship with the movement itself. So the idea of moving your body doesn't feel so miserable. I'm going to start by busting 4 myths about the way we look at exercise. I'll then share some practical ideas to help change the way you see, feel, and think about exercise. Myth 1, exercise always feels good. In a series of studies across his career, Professor Pradiyakakis and colleagues, they demonstrated that whilst our individual responses to exercise can be quite varied, when exercise gets really tough, it feels miserable for everyone. The problem is no one talks about this. We usually stop, the endorphins kick in, and we forget how bad it felt at the time. So despite exercise being hugely marketed for its feel-good effect, it doesn't actually always feel good. If you're hammering the treadmill at full pelt and it feels uncomfortable, you are normal. While we're pushing ourselves to our limits, sweating out of breath, this is a highly uncomfortable feeling for everyone, even if people don't admit it. The good news is, though, if this ultra-intense exercise isn't for you, there's actually no need to do it, which takes us to the second myth. No pain, no gain. World Health Organization has guidelines for how much movement we need to do for our health. And they don't say we need to hammer it at the gym 5 days a week. They don't say we need to run marathons. They don't say we need to do thousands and thousands of daily steps. What they do suggest is that to benefit our health, we need to be moderately active. So that's brisk walking for at least 150 minutes over the whole week. That's about 30 minutes or 5 days of the week. This doesn't need to be all at once, and it can be broken down into shorter bursts. So say 10 minutes after breakfast, 10 minutes after lunch, 10 minutes after dinner. They also encourage us to do strength building activity twice a week, so carrying heavy shopping bags or perhaps a yoga session. So it's likely you're actually doing more than you think. Perhaps if you move all day through your work, you don't even need to do that extra miserable exercise you're trying to learn to enjoy. Sometimes the problem is that we're actually doing enough exercise, but we don't think of this as exercise. So there was a really interesting study that looked at this by Dr. Alia Crum and Professor Ellen Langer, where they had 84 hotel room attendants or chambermaids, and they separated them into 2 groups. At the start, neither group thought the movement they were doing, so making beds, cleaning the rooms, was exercise. But in the experiment, they told one group that this was exercise and that they were meeting the recommended guidelines. The other group, they didn't tell anything. 4 weeks later, despite the behaviour not having changed of either group, both were doing as much exercise. The group who told they were doing enough exercise believed that their exercise had increased. And what's really fascinating is they'd also decreased in weight, blood pressure and body fat, despite the actual exercise not being any different. So this shows the real power of our minds, and by reframing how we see the movement we do, it can have a profound effect on our health. Every movement counts, however small. If we don't find it enjoyable to push ourselves with vigorous exercise, we can still be perfectly healthy without this. Myth 3, exercise only feels good afterwards. So with that no pain, no gain idea comes the idea that exercise can only feel good after we've done it. How often have you heard somebody say, oh, I'll enjoy it once it's over? This emphasis on the after effects gives the impression that exercise isn't something that's supposed to be enjoyed and something that's just got to be tolerated. So we're kind of wishing our lives away. Whilst there is some truth in this feel-good effect and the endorphins we get after exercise, it's also possible to enjoy the movement while we do it. Examples might be playing a sport that you love, or the feeling you get from stretching your body in yoga, or perhaps the feeling of freedom from running or walking. It is possible to find ways of moving that feel enjoyable whilst we're doing it, and we don't always have to wait till afterwards. The final myth, it's all about discipline. I often see fitness influencers talk about discipline as though it's more important than motivation. Whilst we all need discipline at times, this overemphasis on discipline and sacrifice, it presents exercise as something we need to force ourselves to do, regardless of our reasons or whether it's something we enjoy. Now, as an exercise psychologist, I have an issue with this because it's ignoring the fact that not all motivation is equal. If we're motivated by a feeling that we should do something, as discipline implies, we're more likely to approach it begrudgingly, we're not going to enjoy it as much, and it's more likely to make us feel bad. Ultimately then, the first chance we get to stop doing that activity, we stop. So if you're training for a 10K, you need to be disciplined to follow the training program. But if you're only doing it because you're worried about looking a failure to others and you haven't really connected with why running is important to you personally, you're likely to have a miserable time. And the minute the 10K is over, you're likely to stop running. This all comes from a theory called self-determination theory that supports this idea that if the reason you're doing something is because you feel you should, not because you want to, this isn't going to be helpful for your well-being or for keeping exercise up long term. So take the pressure off yourself, let yourself choose to do exercise or not for reasons that are important to you. Nobody enjoys doing something just because they should. So we've busted some myths about exercise that I hope will over time help you reframe how you see and feel about exercise. But you're probably still wondering, how do you make the exercise itself less miserable? Here's some ideas to start with. Firstly, ask yourself this question. What is it about the exercise that you're finding miserable? This will help you see where you could possibly make some changes. So perhaps if you don't like how vigorous exercise feels, could you try something that's less intense on your body? Perhaps you're putting too much pressure on yourself to perform to a certain level. What would it feel like to let this go and focus just on enjoying the activity itself? Or if you're bored of walking the same route, have you ever tried to walk in it backwards? It's actually really interesting what you notice. Secondly, sometimes if we experience uncomfortable body sensations or thoughts, we try and fight them or push them away, which can actually make things worse. You can think of this like a Chinese finger trap, where the more we fight, the tighter it gets. But if we actually stop fighting and ease our finger into it, we can then ease our finger out. So this mindful approach is like letting those difficult sensations and thoughts be there without any need to judge them or to push them away. So if you're outside, instead you might turn your attention to focus on the environment. So really notice the trees around you, the houses, notice things you haven't paid attention to before. Or if you're in a class, notice things about your instructor, the way they're talking, the way they're moving, their energy. Just letting those uncomfortable thoughts be there rather than trying to fight them. And remind yourself it's okay if you're feeling some discomfort. This is normal. Accepting this can loosen the grip it has on you and help you move away from it. The third activity you can try can be helpful if you want to try and find a movement you enjoy, but you need some help with ideas. So the idea is to ask yourself, imagine in an ideal world. So you have all the money in the world, you're physically capable, you're young and active. What type of movement would you really love to do and why? Think about what types of movement you enjoyed as a child, or any types of movement that you've never enjoyed. For me, it's tumbling, like the tumbling those gymnasts do. I just imagine myself being able to fly through the air with ease, feeling the power and energy. It would just be amazing. But whilst I can never say never, this probably isn't the most likely thing I'll be doing right now. But understanding what attracts me to this movement can help me understand other types of movement I enjoy that are achievable, like dancing or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So for each of the following examples, ask yourself, in an ideal world where I've got all the money or the physical capabilities or the mental capabilities, what would I like to try? And when there's a strong yes or no, ask yourself why. So we've got yoga and Pilates, running, cycling, swimming, ball sports, dancing or performing arts, outdoor activities like hiking, gardening or DIY, climbing, martial arts, and then look at the activities you've ticked yes to and look for themes. What do these activities have in common? Now come back to the real world and ask yourself which of these activities you found might you actually be able to find a way to do? And what could be one step, however small, that you take next week towards trying this? If you found this activity interesting and like to do it more thoroughly, I do have a worksheet to support this with hundreds of activity ideas. So just drop me an email and I'm really happy to share that. Another option that not many people are aware of is that you could work with an exercise psychologist like me, and together we could work through the types of activities I suggested here. So it can sometimes be difficult to do these things alone. So particularly if it's something you've been struggling with for a long time, having someone guide you and help you explore different perspectives can make a huge difference. So the blog, which I've linked below, it's actually written by one of my former clients, Adam. He describes the work we did and how he managed to move from exercise being miserable to something that he valued and chose to do. So if you want to find out more, just drop me an email, check out my website, and I do offer free discovery chats. So to summarize what we've been through, there are 4 key messages I'd like you to remember. Exercise doesn't always feel good, but you don't have to be in pain to get gains. Exercise can feel good during as well as after, and having healthy reasons for exercising is more important than forcing ourselves to do it. And to start making exercise less miserable, we can first explore what it is we're finding miserable. We can try a mindful approach to exercise, and we can explore the activities we'd really like to do in an ideal world. All these activities will help us learn more about ourselves and what it is that's important to you, which is the first step in moving towards less miserable movement and healthy motivation to keep you going. Thank you for listening. I'd love to hear what you thought and anything you'll take away. I'm pretty new to YouTube. I'll be posting lots more content about the psychology of exercise, motivation, body image and weight. So please subscribe and reach out if there's any videos that you'd like me to make.